A 19-year-old Norfolk State University student was shot and killed in Suffolk.
Tonight, for the first time, his mom is opening up about the loss in hopes of finding his killer. Police say someone shot into Sidney Watson's car as he was driving on College Drive back in July. And Only 10 on Your Side's Jason Marks talked with his mother. And Jason, she's doing everything she can to give her son justice.
Everything. And can you blame her? I mean, she is a mother who's heartbroken that she lost her son. Gwen Brown is going through something that no mother should. And her son was senselessly taken, and now she is on a hunt for his killer.
Why? That's my question. Why? He was well loved. Who would hate him that much want to kill him?
Brown was driving home July 12th when she came on this scene on College Drive. She noticed her son's car was there. Hours later, she was told he was shot and killed.
Something that no parent should go through ever.
19-year-old Sidney Watson was a student at Norfolk State working 2 jobs. He was studying to be a dentist. Watson was driving with a friend in the car. Someone came up beside them and fired. He died instantly.
When I found out he was shot and killed, it took not only my son, it took me.
Brown keeps her son close. Pictures remain out, images of better times. Brown even asked the crime line to put Sidney's murder on billboards.
I want justice for my son.
We need rescue inside the auditorium, multiple victims.
The United States has a problem with gun violence.
We hold the victims in our hearts.
Perhaps we may never fully understand it.
We talk about it after mass shootings, but it's much larger and more complicated than those debates allow. Here's what you need to know about the state of gun violence in America.
Today in American schools, 19,000 armed officers are dealing with an escalation of violence and criminal prosecutions for children as young as 5 years old. Prosecuting kids, in place of using resources to help them adapt, destroys the fabric of a child's life and achieves the exact opposite of what children need. Every day, 46 children are shot in murders, assaults, and suicide. Almost 40,000 Americans were killed in 2019 due to gun violence. Studies show that guns are now the 3rd leading cause of child death in America. 8,369 children were shot in 2015, 8,867 in 2014, and in 2017, 1,532 children were shot in Chicago alone. Studies show that 1.15 million Americans have been killed by guns since John Lennon was shot dead. Of all the children killed by gun violence in developed countries between 1961 and 2010, 90% of them lived in America.
License to carry. He was trying to get out his ID and his wallet out his pocket, and he let the officer know that he had a firearm and he was reaching for his wallet, and the officer just shot him in his arm.
The police officer pointing his gun into the car. Reynolds calm and clear. Her young daughter in the back seat.
Waiting for him back. I will, sir. No worries. I will. He just shot his arm off. We got pulled over on Larpener.
I told him not to reach for it. I told him to get his hand out.
You told him to get his ID, sir, and his driver's license. Oh my God, please don't tell me he's dead. Please don't tell me my boyfriend just went like that.
I'll be on my way. How long can I stay in a place that can't contain me? Hey Lord, you know I'm tired. Hey Lord, you know I'm tired.
How do you think American culture contributes to black on black murder?
I mean, okay, so then that's where we do need to go ahead and start from the beginning. And so from that perspective, we have been consistently dehumanized. And that's what we're always fighting against. We're always fighting against, showing up. We're always fighting against the narrative of us that presents us as less than human. And it becomes a thing where you teach and tell somebody who they are, they become that. And that's why we have to make a concerted effort as people in our community, as upstanding citizens with means, whatever there is, we have a responsibility to make sure that we are looking back and pulling up. I'm an accountant, so NABID, lifting as we climb. These are the things that we have to do. So American culture in and of itself was built on the fact that Black Americans were not humans. So, of course, as we show up today, we're not going to always be the best humans because we were never told that we could be humans. And even whenever that became a space of, slavery ended, but then everything else that was ever presented was like, let me make sure you know that you are less than. When we watch TV, you know that you are less than. When you hear music, you know that you are less than. We were just talking the other day, about Migos and different rap artists. And I said, this music isn't even made for us anymore. And it's the most awful, degrading, whatever. But of course, what happens? We get in an uproar whenever we say something about a community that is made up of predominantly white men. Oh my God, let's go after him. Well, did you not hear the rest of his lyrics? That were dehumanizing Black people? And you're making money and paying money for that?
Is there anybody that you know personally that you lost to gun violence? Or what are some things you can tell the youth? If you have not, what are something that you can tell the youth who are maybe experiencing gang activity or gun violence or ready to go and pull the trigger or solve their problems through a gun? What would you say to them? What would you say to them?
It's just not worth it. I lost my cousin whenever I was a senior in high school. Chin was so smart, and I remember, and here's the thing, he had actually set himself up. He said, I'm done with the bullshit. He called my mom, asked her to come and live with us, because we lived in a middle class area, and I went to a decent school. And Chin said, and I remember him telling me this. We met up, and he was one of my best friends, so we would always spend time. And it was actually the night after Tupac was killed, because Chin and I both loved Tupac. He came, it was actually the night after homecoming, and he came and he picked me up in his black robe. And we just listened to Tupac as we drove around Dallas. And we got to this place, and he says to me, I'm not no dumb nigga, I just do incriminating shit. And I'll never forget that, because he's not. He was one of the smartest people I knew. And so he finally said, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and commit myself to my life. And he called my mom, asked my mom if he could move in with us. And my mom said yes, of course. But before she could even do anything, he had already got the paperwork signed, had already been to the school, had himself enrolled. Like, he was ready. He went back home a week later, just to kind of do some final stuff. Ended up at the juvie over some bullshit, broke into a car. He came home. 2 days later, he was shot in the head. And I just thought he was so close. He did everything. He had literally got a job at Walmart, was saving his checks. He wasn't even cashing the paychecks he was getting. Because he was obviously making money other ways. But he was setting himself up, and he was fucking 16, 17 years old. And you never know when your card is gonna get pulled. And that's the bottom line. So you can get out here and do this thing and make plans for your future, et cetera, but you never know when your plans are gonna get cut short if you keep dabbling in that game. He went home for a weekend to just clean some stuff up. Go deal with this last person, do this last thing. Ended up in jail. ended up dead within a 2-week span.
And then, now for the $1 million question, how can you love where you live when there's so much gang violence and gang activity around you every day? How do you manage to love where you live?
I'm gonna be completely honest with you. There's a lot of reasons why. People live in Ukraine right now with the Ukraine and Russian war. People still are able to come back to wherever they're staying at and still find joy with their friends and comrades. People in Afghanistan and able to still have hope and love each other because they're able to stay together. People that live in China with communism, people go out there suffering under dictatorships every day. You can still find happiness in horrible places. It just takes having the right people in the right place and time. That's how you find happiness. And here, we have Guns Down Life Up, we have family, we have our friends, and we have places we can go to. Hell, even if it's just your friends at school, even if you have something to distract yourself, you play games, you go ahead, make videos, you make music, you write, you do whatever you do to find enjoyment. And just because you live in a horrible place doesn't mean you can't find enjoyment in your life, even if you are surrounded by negativity.
My name is Susan Voletier, and I'm from Malakoff, France.
What do you think about gun violence?
I think it's weird. Where I'm from, we don't have gun violence, and so when I hear about gun violence in the U.S., I'm always kind of baffled, because I think how can a country that says that it's the best country in the world can have access to guns in such an easy way? It doesn't make sense.
Right. Do you think that guns are even necessary? Do you think it's something that we should even have?
No.
Can you explain that?
If there's multiple reasons that people decide to have a gun, whether it's self-defense or because it's their right, but I think that guns are just a useless weapon most of the time, the weapon of a coward, and just I think guns were invented to be able to have superiority over people, but in a country in which preach equality, liberty, and the freedom to do what you want, but so everyone can do what they want, then you shouldn't need a gun which was made to be superior.
Is there anything you can give, any advice you can give someone on how to deal with those internal struggles in terms of using a gun to solve their issues or solve their problems?
I think if you're thinking about using a gun to solve your issue, I look at a gun not as a weapon, but as kind of as an escape and a way to hide behind a gun. The guns, if you use a gun to protect yourself, for example, you're not using a gun to protect yourself. You're using a gun to tell yourself, I'm safe now, but you wouldn't need a gun if you felt safe in your environment, so why don't you feel safe? I think you don't need to treat the symptoms, you need to treat the root of the disease, and the gun are just a symptom of your fear or your
internal.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Any last words that you want to say in terms of your experience as it relates to gun violence in France and gun violence in the United States?
Well, I've actually never seen a gun in real life. I think I've been sheltered most of my life, but I hear about those children that are just taught how to hunt from a very young age, or how at least to use a gun from a very young age. And I just think I'm very happy I was taught to solve my issue in other ways, or how at least to release what I think in the world in a less violent way. And I think change comes from children. So if we start teaching our children a way to defend or feel protected that is not by using weapons, then we should start healing a lot.
Propaganda is essential to any military campaign. Black people tend not to understand propaganda. And the reason why we tend not to understand propaganda is because the propaganda channels, the mediums, the conduits, the radio, the television, the newspaper, we tend to just treat as forms of entertainment. We don't see them as military strategy. When there's a movie depicting black people in a negative image, when there's caricatures in the newspaper making jokes about black people, we tend to just see it as political entertainment. We don't see it as laying the foundation before the storm. That's exactly what they did in Wilmington. You always seek to create a context that allows your military campaign to be acceptable. There's always context. You study Adolf Hitler in Nazi Germany. He had a propaganda campaign that lasted over a year before he began to physically oppress the Jews. He had to make sure that the national mindset had been conditioned to accept the extermination to come. In Wilmington, North Carolina, the same exact thing happened years before Nazi Germany. Through the magazines, through the radio, through word of mouth, through stage play, they created negative images of black people in the minds of white folk in case there were any liberals who would have been against what they were going to do. They were slowly able to reform their opinion by constantly repeating negative information about the target population. See, the one thing about the brain that we got to understand is the creature of repetition. Whoever has the most access to the brain rules the brain. It's all about volume, not quality. The more you tell people that a certain group of people are no good, the more you show images, the more you show sounds, song, poem, dance, projecting negative information about a people, sooner or later, the subconscious begins to get conditioned automatically, because you can't turn off the subconscious to what it sees and what it hears. Sound and image, you cannot stop it except to stay away from it. So sound and image are critical to any propaganda campaign because they help lessen the defenses of anyone who may be against what you're trying to do. It's the same thing happening right now. There is a direct assault on the image of the black man and woman internationally. So when mass incarceration, homicide takes place, nobody cares what's happening to black folk because they've already been conditioned to believe that these people are better off dead anyway. So propaganda is the first stage of military warfare. Right now, we're being set up for another extermination campaign. It's going to be worse than what went on in Wilmington, Tulsa, Charleston, Rosewood. It's going to be worse. Whenever the propaganda gets worse, then you know the extermination is going to be that much worse, because you see how far the exterminator had to go in order to condition the people to prepare them for the carnage to come.
Be clear, these are all reasons why people
should kill.
Should kill.
Yeah.
Should. I think
should kill.
Or use as a justification to kill. Right?
What?
The main one I think is the reason why they always kill nowadays is because they talked about dead mans. Like if you see in the drill raps, they always talk about how someone talked about the dead mans, now they laying in the hospital, and then on top of that they talk about their dead mans and be like, oh, that's why you're in the hospital, this and that, that's why we shot Jordan, this and that, this and that.
So in other words, do you think music influences this behavior?
Yeah, like sneak this and fill it.
Because I feel like music is also a way, you know how music is a way to express yourself. So when they're saying that, that's basically them telling their ops what they did to them and what they're going to do to them in the future. So then that's how their ops is going to respond, by getting ready, staying protected, and being ready for any worst case scenario. And then they're going to do the same thing to the other guy. And then, yeah. And then they're going to rap about it.
Is it justifiable?
No. I don't think they should kill each other. I think we should come together and focus on bigger problems, because we already seen the whole George Floyd situation, you know? it's bigger than just us killing each other. We're killing our own community, and instead of us coming together and saying Black Lives Matter, we're just killing our own black people. So how can you say Black Lives Matter if you're going to keep on killing your own black people?
I agree 100% with you. That's a very, very, very strong comment you made, and I agree. I cannot agree. And this is exactly the reason why we're doing this documentary, because, like you said, we sit here and we say Black Lives Matter, but do Black lives really matter to us?
That's what I've been wondering.
It should, shouldn't it?
It should.
It's okay.
What's up?
It should, right? Black lives should matter, and at all costs. And so, this is why we're doing this, and this is why you guys are telling your story. But again, going back to, what justifies someone killing someone? There's really no justification. I think what you said really hit home. It made a lot of sense. And I'm glad that you put, you was able to rationalize that thought and say it, articulate it well, because our lives do matter.
All right, my name is Bishop Mitchell G. Taylor. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Urban Upbound, a nonprofit organization that was developed 20 years ago. We're celebrating our official 18th year this October, but we began conceptualizing how to break cycles of poverty in public housing neighborhoods 20 years ago. And the thought was to break the conventional methodology, which was bringing programming from the outside in or dropping it from the top down, and actually developing something from the inside out and the bottom up. How? By organizing all the social networks that exist in public housing neighborhoods and figuring out how we can break those cycles of poverty by giving people a hand up, not a handout.
Do you think gun violence is getting better or worse in the Black community?
Wow. Obviously, gun violence is getting worse in our communities. I think that we have to also take into account the advent of social media, and that the revolution is being televised, and things that were swept under the table, not seen, not amplified. Now it's a different day, it's a different time. Everything that is being done in our neighborhoods, to our neighborhoods, through our neighborhoods, is being televised, and combining that with heightened gun activity, it just feels like a lot more.
Can you tell us, or can you give your perspective on how you think we can lower gun violence?
If I had to answer to that question, I think I'd be on every talk show in America and probably get international invites as well, because I think that every urban community, every urban city, every urban tract is experiencing these kinds of, heightened conflicts. And unfortunately for us here in the Northeast, especially in New York, it centers around, gun violence and activity. And I think that, you have to understand the root cause of gun violence, period, is poverty. All of this is an outgrowth of poverty. And I believe if you give young people a pathway to success, if you give them the time that is needed. See, what we don't understand is that most of our communities, especially our Black and brown communities, these are the symptoms of 400 years of, we can break it down, 150 years of slavery, another 50 years of Jim Crow, another 75 years of his cousin James Crow Esquire. And guess what? The Black man has not had any comprehensive counseling. And I think that when we think about, creating pathways that deter and create, alternatives for young people, we have to be intentional. And we have to be intentional about what we're fighting. We're fighting poverty. It starts in our homes. It starts in our education systems. It starts, with how we symbiotically use that phrase, it takes a village to raise a child.
What would you say to those youth who are looking to impulsively pick up a gun to resolve their issues in someone's life? What would you say to that?
Yeah, what would I say to a young person that impulsively picks up a gun to resolve a conflict? Well, first of all, I would instinctively say, don't pick up a gun to resolve a conflict, because that doesn't resolve a conflict. It actually perpetuates a stream of activity that will follow you from the time you use that gun I don't even know if there's an end game in that. And so I would say to young people that are impulsively thinking about using a gun to solve a conflict, don't do it. There are other ways to do it, and there are other methods. And I think that, I'm almost hearing the responses. They're saying, Bishop, but you're not going with me to school. You're not with me when, I'm minding my business, and I'm just, you're not there. And how do I understand that? This is a very complicated society that we're dealing with. And I think that young people have to have the avenues and the places and people that they can feel comfortable about to talk to about what they're going through and what they're dealing with. The problem is, our youth are facing so many things today, a lot of things that we didn't face when we were their age. It's just a whole nother world. And, it's a difficult answer to give a difficult question to give a comprehensive answer to. But I would certainly say you can't resolve conflict with conflict. Conflict has to be resolved, with resolution that only comes through conversation. And it just depends on where the conflict is coming from. There's so many binaries that I can kind of talk about as it relates to a young person deciding to pick up a gun to resolve a conflict. Just think about that. A young person, taking a gun to school because they're afraid of what may happen to them at school. It's a hard question to answer, but I will tell any young person, you cannot solve a conflict with a gun. Don't do that.
My name's Taylor Chen. Right now I'm in school. I go to Syracuse University.
Okay. What do you think about black-on-black murder, and how can we address it among men of color?
I think when it comes to black-on-black murder, first of all, murder of any form is bad. I think specifically, though, in the media, it's portrayed heavily as black-on-black murder, such as black-on-black crime, and I think that terminology is bad in general because it's stating that we're part of the problem, and we are not the problem. The problem is society, and the fact that we are being given not as many opportunities, and we are giving worse opportunities by having our neighborhoods filled with violence and guns and a lot of police observance. That's putting us in these negative situations. I think specifically when it comes to our young men of color, times are getting harder, especially with COVID and a lot of people getting laid off, losing their jobs. Like, a lot of young men are just looking for any way to help their family and really just try and get a better life for themselves. And, sometimes they might not go about it the right way. They might turn to the streets. And I think, as a community and as society, the best way we can do it is just try and give them more opportunities, more organizations like Harlem Mother Saves and this art company, Art Save, to just get our young men off the street, like Harlem Children's Zone. There's so many opportunities that we got to just get our youth into them, get them in school, just get them off the streets, get them off the corner, doing good in life. And I think also just getting stricter gun laws, stricter tests, helping the community become more involved with the police. That's on the police too. The police gotta reach out to the community more. You're gonna work in the community, you gotta get to know the community, you gotta hold events, you gotta talk to them. And that's really important on both ends. We got to work with each other if we want to help our young men. So I think 100% we can't blame the young men. It's not always on them. A lot of them just aren't given the right opportunities, and we just got to help them out. We got to come together.
Have you lost anyone to gun violence personally?
I haven't personally lost anyone to gun violence, but I know people who have.
You have?
Yeah.
What do you say, one more question, what do you say to a person who's willing to pick up a gun to solve their problems?
I think a person willing to pick up a gun to solve their problems has probably been through a lot, seen a lot, maybe not has had the best life, maybe not be in the right situation. I don't think that necessarily makes them a bad person. I don't think any person is specifically bad. I think that they would just have bad circumstance, and, you know, I don't agree with what they did. I personally wouldn't do it, but I hope that down the line they can see the error in their ways and they can fix that, and I hope they don't, you know, continue to pick up a gun. You know, pick up a gun once it's not good, but to continue is even worse. So.
Sure. I feel like, you know, we should like have more love for each other. You know, like help each other out. You know, learn how to love ourselves instead of killing each other. You know, and I think that's what's missing in the black community, unity and love. Because I've watched many like neighbors and friends and brothers and sisters get killed by our own kind, like by their own friends or best friends. I lost, I think a couple of years ago, I lost one of my good friends. His best friend killed him. Yeah, shot him in the back of his head. And they used to be real close, real good friends. And one day, all of a sudden, they had an argument. And he turned on his friend and decided to set him up and shoot him in the back of his head. And that really bothered me. It's been many years. It still bothers me. Like, why would you really like turn on your once best friend? And I mean, think about taking his life. I mean, if you guys don't speak, that's one thing. But now he actually set him up, took a gun, and shot him in the back of his head. Yeah, I think black people should wake up and realize out of all the communities and cultures, we're the one like really like hurting each other. Like I wish, like look at the Chinese people, like the Japanese people, Spanish people, the white folks. You know, they don't kill each other the way we kill each other. So I think the black community need a lot of work to do. We need to really realize what the problem is and really look out for one another, our brothers and sisters, and learn how to unite and love each other, you know? I mean, you know, there's 100 million ways to solve a problem. Gun violence is not the answer. You know, so some kids, they don't know better because of the way their background, the way they're raised. They have friends, gangsters in the air telling them, yo, why don't you go do something to him? Because that's the type of crowd and the kind of people that they follow. I can't judge a kid because I don't know his background. But I would really sit down and have a talk with him and give him a hug and let him know, like, you know, that's not the way, babe. You got to learn how to love each other and you know, maybe say a prayer, talk to God. Gun violence is not the way, you know. I would really sit him down and try to get through to him mentally that way.
Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And this is an amazing interview. You did an awesome job. And I'm pretty sure your words are going to resonate across the globe.
And lately, have you been watching like YouTube and social media and stuff? And have you seen like this guy named K Flock? He's necessarily been the guy named as No Cap in My Rap. He said, I forgot what he said. I'm in fashion, I bet I still up it. How do you feel about that scene? And the guy was in fashion when he upped it on the guy. So how do you feel about that? Do you think like these new rappers are like getting too much like fame and they start doing like dumb stuff, or how do you feel about that?
I feel like right now with like the way drill rap has been evolving over the years, I feel like now because so much people listen to their music and they like their music, I feel like now they do stuff that they do just to be able to write in their songs, so they won't cap about their raps. So the things that they do is just to write about it in their songs. And now that people are listening to the music, they think it's okay to go out and shoot each other just for fun, because a lot of people is fine with it. It's not like they're going to say, oh, stop, this music's bad, you need to stop shooting at each other. People are playing the music every day instead of realizing that the things they say actually happen in real life, and that's not right. And
so first off, can you start off by telling us your name and your occupation?
My name is Sid Watson, and I am an administrator in Stamford, Connecticut.
So,
One of the questions we are asking specifically around gun violence is, what is your take on it? And number one, how have you been impacted? Can you talk a little bit about your personal loss as it relates to gun violence?
I feel like we're in a crisis. Every day I turn the news, I see another young man shot and killed from senseless acts of violence. For me, I feel like gun violence is not the answer. I feel like, giving our kids a better way to handle their problems is the solution. And how do we go about doing that is through education. Personally, I lost my son 3 years ago from gun violence. He was shot and killed in Suffolk, Virginia, while on the way to the studio. He was a music artist, and he was passionate about getting into the music industry. He also attended Norfolk State University and was majoring, studying to become a dentist. When I never thought in a million years that gun violence will, end up on my doorstep. But when it did, I was heartbroken, because I felt like I did everything right in terms of keeping my son on the right path to success. I was in his life, I provided guidance, I thought I did all the right things. But yet and still, he lost his life to gun violence.
Can you talk about how you deal with your internal struggles on a day-to-day basis for those people who may experience some of the same experiences as losing someone to gun violence? What do you do on a day-to-day basis to cope?
Well, every day is different. I know when it first happened, I had no coping mechanisms to deal with the tragedy. I was angry, I was upset, I was blaming myself, I was questioning God, all those things that you can imagine. Actually, I didn't understand how to process what had happened in regards to my son. But as time moved on, one of the coping mechanisms I embraced was to be more reflective on not blaming myself. I was blaming myself for what happened for quite some time. What I come to realize, it was just unfortunate circumstances as to why my son is no longer here. And then I started reflecting on the young man that shot and killed my son, and how he had no problem pulling the trigger and killing my son because he himself was failed. And what I mean by failed is that somewhere along his journey, somewhere along his path, that someone failed him. And that someone could have been his parents, that someone could have been, the school system. But along the way, no one gave him the guidance he needed to be successful. And ultimately it led to my son being shot and killed because he had no regards to life at all, if he was able to do that. So as I began to think about that and began to understand that the only reason he was able to do that because he had no guidance in life, and my son did. And it was just unfortunate that those two, they crossed paths with each other. And so now, as an educator and assistant principal, I always try, when I interact with kids, to be the example, first of all, and then provide guidance. Kids are going to make decisions. Kids are going to make wrong decisions, and all the time. They're kids, and it's up to the adults. It's up to their support system in their village to guide them every step of the way. And Sean Lewis, the individual that shot and killed my son, I don't believe he had that. And I could be wrong, but if you are able to pick up a gun and end someone else's life, you had no guidance. You had no guidance.
What would you say to those kids who may feel like joining a gang or picking up a gun is the way? What would you say to that?
You know, and I'm going to speak through the lens of an educator. You know, I've been in education for 18 years. And when I tell you, when kids are not active and connected and engaged in school, then they start looking for other things, other activities to engage in. Some high risk, some low risk, but nonetheless disconnected from the school. So I would say for those individuals that feel like gang is the way or gang activity is the way, I would say you're wrong. You're wrong. You know, the decisions you make in life, you have to be prepared to reap those consequences. And nothing good is going to come out of joining a gang. Nothing. You know, what you should rather do is, you know, get involved in extracurricular activities, pay attention in class, seek the help you need if you don't understand something, and build a better future for you. Build a better future for you. You know, because at the end of the day, when you're an adult, you know, you have to take care of yourself. You have to take care of yourself, and nothing good is going to come out of joining a gang. Nothing.
Going back into July 12th, having that first phone call to now, on a scale of 1 to 10, where are you at in your healing process?
I would say I am at a 5. And I say that because, you know, when I reflect back on July 12th, you know, I still have those thoughts where, like, how could this happen? Why did this happen? What more I could have done? And so, you know, when I still have those thoughts going through my head, you know, I still haven't accepted the fact that it happened. I accepted the fact that he's gone, but I haven't accepted the fact that he you know, the incident happened. So I would say a 5. I would say a 5. I'm at a 5. And how will I get to a 10? I would say justice, you know, for all 3 individuals involved. Only one right now is currently, you know, awaiting trial, but there are 2 others out there are still living their lives, probably with no remorse. And it's unfortunate because the chances of them, you know, taking another life is pretty high. You know, if they could do it once, they can do it again. So seeking justice, and then having an understanding, not saying that, you know, when it's time to, you know, attend the trial that I will get my answers, but the fact that, you know, the case is being heard and my son is not a forgotten black young man.
What do you do in those moments where nobody knows what you're feeling? Nobody understands what you're feeling? In those silent thoughts of pain, what do you do in that situation?
You know, I grew up with my mom serving God and believing in God and walking on faith and not by sight. And so when I have those moments where, you know, when no one understands, I go inward and I reflect on the goodness of God, you know, and the things that he has done in my life, and not just with me, but for my kids, for my family. You know, considering the challenges that I had to overcome growing up, you know, over the years I've gained, you know, thick skin, and I just reflect on his goodness.
Has plagued numerous communities, with violent crimes and public safety at the forefront of many people's minds after losing loved ones. Well, to help with reducing the violence in their community, a local organization called Art Saves put together an art therapy initiative that addresses gang violence and mental health challenges. Attendees say the Love Where You Live movement promotes positive transformation within the community.
We use art to change behavior, to change emotions, and to address gun violence within low-income communities.
We've been interviewing different people on the perspectives on gang violence.
If we combine all our thoughts and come together as a collective unit, I feel like we could bring big change and try to help out our community.
The change that many want to see, and they say the next step for Art Save is the creation of a documentary showing how gang-related violence impacts the community and the immediate changes that must happen.
Love Where You Live. Art Save. Yo. I'm from a place where some never come, but the sun still shines on everyone. However the web is spun, you don't gotta move out of your neighborhood to live in a better one. I know it's easier said than done. Hard to catch your breath when the air care less for lungs. And when the youth who need to be led instead fled and run from lead and gun. And so I meditate instead of medicate. Forget a metaverse instead I read a verse. My head it hurts, won't let it burst. When I'm on red alert, read the red letters first. To beautify the hood is very beneficial, but where do we begin has always been an issue. Do we start in the park outside the window? Do we start in the heart? Body is the temple. In the heart, body is the temple. In the heart, body is the temple.